swear I'm like the only one at this table that can't do an accent. Hello, welcome to SJU and Fandom Entertainment.
That's not an accent.
Good morning. It is me, Danielle Radford, the only person here with a German Oma who cannot do a German accent whatsoever. We have got Ed. Good morning.
Good to see you there.
Good to see you. We've got Joe Starr. We have got Dan.
Hello.
Happy Monday? Monday. We did it.
It is.
Welcome once again, SJU and Fandom Entertainment. We played a game with the writers of Avengers Endgame, and we chatted with one of the VX artists behind Game of Thrones. So we're going to be showing some of that off. But before we get to that, we're going to be talking about the big news of the weekend, Universal's decision to cancel The Hunt. So this is via Universal. On Saturday, Universal announced that they would not be releasing the new Blumhouse movie, The Hunt, on September 27th as originally planned. The film has been described as a dark satire in which liberal characters hunt conservative characters for sport. It's written by David Lindelof and one of his leftovers writers, Nick Kuss, and directed by Craig Zobel. And there's a line who says Z for Zechariah. That's a Ryan thing that I love, who directed episodes of The Leftovers. A few days prior, Universal had pulled ads from the film in the wake of the mass shootings in Dayton and in El Paso. And then after the ads were pulled and more media attention was put onto The Hunt, including heavy criticism for its plot line from Fox and Friends, President Trump was presumed to be referring to The Hunt when he tweeted last week, "The movie coming out is made in order to inflame and cause chaos. They create their own violence and then try to blame others. They are the true racists and very bad for our country." So Universal did put out a statement. It is on their website for The Hunt, and they have pulled the official trailers off of all of their stuff, but you can still find it from the people who rip trailers and put stuff up on YouTube. And so their statement was, while Universal Pictures had already paused the marketing campaign for The Hunt after thoughtful consideration, the studio has decided to cancel our plans to release the film. We stand by our filmmakers and will continue to distribute films in partnership with bold and visionary creators like those associated with this satirical social thriller, but we understand that now is not the right time to release this film. Variety said that insiders told them the studio came to the decision alongside with the filmmakers, although none of them have really spoken out publicly about it yet. So, again, this was obviously the big news of the weekend when this dropped. Lots of arguments, censorship, not censorship, kind of what's everyone's initial thoughts about Universal not releasing The Hunt, and do we think this was the right call?
I'm in the minority, I think, of most of the people that I talked to, and that I think it was for a multitude of reasons, which I'm sure that we'll talk about.
There's not a whole lot to unpack here.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to the idea of well, I mean, it's not censorship because they're not saying that the movie can't exist. Right. They're not stopping the movie from existing. But I am with the idea of suppressing art that may be unpopular politically, and I understand that is it's worthy of a lot of conversation. But at the same time, I mean, I felt the same way about Eli Roth's Death Wish remake. When it came out, it was after shortly thereafter, another mass shooting. It says a lot that I can't remember which one it was. But I felt strongly at that time that that film should have been released delayed. Out of sensitivity. That was a movie whose ethos about violence I did not agree with. I don't know how I feel about this movie because I haven't seen it, but part of it, and we'll get into more later, but part of it for me is just honestly trying to be a fair-minded person, and saying that if I apply that rationale to a movie whose ethos that I may not agree with personally, then I also have to look at it through the same lens with a film that is different, is satire, but also I think that is a movie about Americans hunting Americans at a time when that's happening in real life, when people are out there targeting people, specific groups of people. I don't know. For me, I think that was I think it's the thing to do in my mind.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. I think I don't agree with censorship. I don't believe in the suppression of art. I believe you should be able to make and release the kind of art that you want to release. I also believe that you can choose to hit pause on your own art. I think censorship would be more along the lines of the Fed stepping in and saying that a studio can't release their own movie. But a studio saying, you know what, we've made a film, we're deciding what to do with it. You're right. The question of what's the point, and is it good art or bad art or necessary, I think is going to play differently for different folks. Because the tie into this sort of ties into people shouting about like video games over the week after El Paso and Dayton. Violent video games, Walmart's going to pull, violent video game ads and stuff like that, and we should be pulling, violent movies and things of that nature. Should we not? Sometimes I don't know. I agree. I think that the timing is bad on this. But then again, there was that great BoJack Horseman episode where they made it was like a movie about like a mall shooting or something like that. Or just like a really over-the-top violent action movie. And like the running gag was like every time they tried to release it, it just kept getting pulled because there was another shooting. So yeah, in terms of like release or in terms of like reaction to what's happened, I think overall it's not censorship. I agree with you, Dan. That by definition it's not. It's a studio making a decision what to do with their own art. Should they have? I mean, I can't speak for them. I probably would have pulled it if I was Ted Universal.
Or Jim Comcast.
The Boston Comcast.
Exactly.
I definitely, I have to, when it comes to just on the basis of, is this the right time because of what just happened? It happens with TV all the time. Buffy had an episode that was pulled and then later played because it was around the time of a shooting. I agree with that much. And I don't know, because a lot of people are saying that, maybe maybe it is censorship because the president talked about it, and I don't know how much that factors in here.
Yeah, well, the fascinating thing to me about that is that if he did influence this movie being pulled, he has pulled a movie that he could have used. He could have had a field day with this movie.
Well, that was kind of my point.
Yeah, I mean, but that for me is the reason, again, and this is a little bit more into my personal opinion, so, I mean, beliefs, I guess, or whatever, but that's another reason why it seems counterintuitive to a lot of people, but why I'm actually kind of glad that it got pulled, because it was already happening. This happens so many times, which is that there's an epidemic of this happening in our country right now. And every time it happens, there are some people who are vested in a lot of different ways in this conversation about how to fix this problem not happening, because a lot of this potential solutions to how to fix this problem conflict with other things, other influences and lobbies and everything else in the country. And so not even action, but the conversation about how to have it a lot of times is just, there are a lot of people that are looking for something else to talk about, to keep the actual conversation that needs to be had, and I don't know the solution to it, from happening. And it was already happening with this movie.
Yeah. Well,
the focus was already going from coming from somebody actually working together for once and trying to figure out how to try to fix this, to look at this movie, it's bad. And so I know a lot of people said that was, well, congratulations, you succeeded in doing it. But to me, I'm actually glad that they're not going to have this movie, the people that want to not talk about what needs to be talked about, they're not going to have this movie for the next month to use as
a scapegoat, or
the scapegoat or the shiny thing to point people towards and say, like, no, we should be talking about this. And maybe this will make it just a little bit easier to keep the focus on what should actually be done, which is trying to figure out a solution to this, which does not happen because we get distracted by something. This was just the something else that I think a lot of people were trying to use to distract from what we should actually be talking about, in my in my opinion. In my opinion.
Right, and I would definitely echo every single sentiment in that. The one thing that does bother me though, and I think it might have been brought up in the Forbes article I read, but or one of the other articles I read about this, is that it seems it's real cute for everybody to do these movies where conservatives go into the hood and shoot everybody up, like The Purge 2, The Purge 8, The Purge 27. They seem to be all about a lot of rich people in a cabal shooting up a bunch of poor people because, but we think that that's naturally how things are supposed to go. So we don't care. And nobody raises any eyebrows. Nobody cares about that. But when it's conservatives who are being hunted by liberal elites, which is how they feel, as probably the most conservative person at this table, conservatively, I'll say that, because I was a card-carrying member of the N and the other two letters until I was about 25 years old. You know what I mean? I hunted, I fished, I did a lot of. I'm from Missouri, last slave state. You know what I mean? I am a Missouri guy through and through. First off, so when I saw a movie that depicted the liberal elites with their goofy non-gun knowledge coming for conservative people who are born to this, I was like, I'm gonna watch that. And in the end, the hero is gonna be a conservative person who isn't a jerk. And obviously, to me, in my personal opinion, that might be a little bit of a Hollywood creation. But at least we could see Betty Gilpin as a nice, probably conservative person, blonde, blue-eyed, nice mom lady, triumph over the liberals at the end, and maybe we could see a little nuance, at least in fiction. But no, because we're dedicated to removing the fake gun problem and we don't really care about the real gun problem, now we can't even watch art. Now we can't even watch something that's a treatise between two political ideologies. Now we can't even get it. Now we can't even get it. Like, you broke it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That makes me mad. That really incenses me.
Well, yeah, because the discussion about this movie right now isn't what it is. Because I haven't seen it. No one at this table has seen it. But more importantly, the people that are dictating the public conversation haven't seen it. But they don't care about talking about what it is. Mm-hmm. They care about talking about what they say it is, what they say it represents. And that may or may not be the case. Again, I haven't seen the movie. I can't say other than the premise, which again I've just said, just based on the premise, I don't think it's the right time for this movie. But the content is also now on trial, despite the fact that nobody, including the people talking about it, have seen it.
Nope.
But that's part of my problem with it though, because you know when is the wrong time to say, hey, person in power, you suck. The wrong time is all the time. It's all the time. It's always the wrong time to protest. You ever notice that? Boy, I wish those Black Lives Matter people would pick a good time to protest. When's the right time to say that the system's broken and white supremacy? You could pick out a line of 10 cops and 2 of them are Nazis when you go to their house. When is the right time to elucidate that point? When is the right time to destroy that power structure? When is the right time to present the eat the rich problem you have? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When's the right time for that? There's never the right time. So don't miss me with this ain't the right time for stuff. It is never the right time to speak truth to power. It is never the right time to make art about what's going on in the country right now. You know, the right time is when it's right happening. But we're denied that because of this goofy, and I won't even call it censorship. It's an economic decision.
Right.
We have made censorship into an economic decision because of how capitalistic we are. Trust me, I don't hate capitalism, but I'm just saying because we're so bathed in it, the amniotic fluid of capitalism is going through our veins, and we're drinking it and eating it all day. You know what I mean? It's like in the abyss, right? You go down to the trench and just capitalism is keeping you alive. The fluid of capitalism is keeping you alive. That's how we feel. That being the case, right? I read an article in the Forbes article that said, after all, why risk making The Interview or The Hunt when you can make a bunch of money off of venom and cats? I rest my case. That was in a Forbes article. They're saying, well, why risk making some art when you can make a weird musical and then venom? That's great, buddy. That's a great message for the world. But he was absolutely being 100% true.
Sure.
Now capitalism has become another form of censorship, and that just sucks.
Those are great points.
Literally don't know how to follow.
That's great, but
Yeah, although I would push back. I mean, that's The Interview, for example. I think we don't know the numbers because but I think it probably made a pretty healthy amount of money.
Yeah, I wonder how much
was it worth.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is because of the controversy some of these wind up. Because if this whole blow up hadn't happened, I think that this comes in, people call it a Purge ripoff, and then it's like gone in 2 weeks and no one speaks of it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think at the most there would have been like a little complaining on Twitter where people were folks were like, oh, so the movie that exposes the Hollywood elite didn't get as much press as a Purge movie. I see. There might have been like 2 weeks of that. I think that's the most. Yeah, it would have come in. There might have been a box office article about it, like meeting expectations or whatever. Most people who went to see it would have gone, cool,
But
and like
think
moved
about
on.
the world, though, where a bunch of people go see it, and a bunch of people actually have a conversation about.
Sure.
It seems as though that movie saying that I hate you so much that I would hunt you, Grandma, who likes whoever the hell candidate. That's not true, is it? No, it's not true, baby. We're going to have our little battle in the ballot box, but in regular life, I don't want to harm you. I don't want to kill you. I don't want to hurt you. That could have been a conversation, but now we are robbed of that too.
Well, I agree, and I think that speaks to a bigger problem, which is that yes, I would love for us to live right now in a society where art comes out and people go and see it with an open mind and then have intellectual discussions about it. The problem being that, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying, which is that the machinery of how we get our information has also now been corporatized and is now part of. They're all part of a different corporate entity, and that corporate entity has to make money.
Yep.
News divisions used to be independent. News divisions used to be about reporting the news. That is generally, particularly with cable news, gone away, and now it's about maybe certain networks, or actually, let's be honest, all of the networks, to an extent, particularly the cable news networks, are looking at their programming and not saying what speaks to covering a story in the most objective way, but what makes us the most money. What do most people tune into? Well, the attention-grabbing stuff is the stuff that gets a lot of attention, but may not necessarily be the most nuanced conversation. And I think
Outrage clicks are a thing.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
absolutely a thing.
and then so that dictates how things are covered, which then dictates how people talk about things, which means that the decision about what this movie was made and has been made in 70% of the people's minds already. Because this network says it's this, and that network says it's that, and nobody's seen it, but they have to pick their side because that's what their viewers want.
It's all football now.
It's all football now, and so it's such a. I mean, and it may seem like we're blowing this out of proportion. This is one case, but it is it's endemic of the symptoms of so many different things that are happening right now about discourse. About art, about art's place in society, about the influence of art, about where politics and art, about the weaponization of artists and their voices
and the
their works.
monetization of outrage.
Yes. Yes. It is in a microcosm. It's weird. It's like the perfect storm of just like 15 different things that are happening right now that all need to be addressed, but aren't being.
But instead of the hunt is the conversation, or Fortnite.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's telling that it's easier for Walmart to ban video games from advertising in their stores than it is to regulate the firearms that they sell. I'm not saying that they should do one thing or the other, but I think it's telling that one of those things was done the week
Just
after,
very quickly,
and the other one has been stuck in a mire of debate, and conversation for years. Years. I mean, they were having this when I saw this video game thing. That discussion was happening when I was in high school in 20 years ago with Columbine. It was all about music and video games, and
Marilyn Manson and Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, Marilyn Manson and Grand Theft Auto.
Mortal
back then.
Kombat. Yep.
Mortal Kombat. That has been the go-to for I mean, go back to the 90s. Go back to Two Live Crew was the scapegoat for certain. It's just like the art keeps changing, but the other stuff keeps happening. So maybe it's not the art, is what I'm saying. But at the same time, I don't think the art should distract from. It's so complicated, and people want to make it so simple, and that's the frustrating thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm proposing. I'm going to start the video game lobby. Me and a bunch of billionaires are going to lobby for video games. We will protect them the way the guns are protected.
Are you
then we'll have a
suggesting that the gamers rise up? Is that your suggestion?
I don't know if I would suggest that quite yet. We have a vetting process to see who gets to be called a gamer.
I mostly just play like StarCraft and stuff, so like I know and how it's influenced me is I do a lot of mining.
Yeah.
Oh, same for me in Stardew Valley. I just I try to marry every girl in town and get a divorce.
Well, when I play an NBA 2K, I'm seeking for conservatives to dunk on all the time.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's just the way it is. It's inherently political.
Everything's
These
political.
things. Well,
Do they have that Rick Santorum expansion pack yet? I heard it was a little buggy that they're still working the.
I'm waiting for my next 3-day weekend to just really be able to play through it.
Really just get that whole Senate DLC where it's just like Kamala Harris versus Mitch McConnell. Tip off.
both their ankles are
fire.
broken after 1 second.
Yeah.
Can't buy a
McConnell's
bucket.
got a good bank shot.
That's so funny.
But this is, I mean, eventually, we'll wrap up this part of this, but
Yeah.
this is eventually going to come out at some point, right? It'll be in VOD or...
Yeah, no, this will be made available through some forum at some point.
And we'll talk about it for a weekend.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
won't even talk about it as much as we talked about Bird Box.
Yeah.
No.
And then that'll be done.
Like Blumhouse will be fine. They made this for $20, and they'll, like that. I mean, that it's hyperbole, obviously, but like, I mean, that's what they do. They
yeah.
small investment, large return. They're fine.
Yep.
Well, and the difference
They
for
can
me
miss one or
between
two.
this and the interview, which I was not in favor of the interview being pulled, the difference for me between those two things is that the interview I saw and I still saw as the studio being overly cautious and kowtowing to a vague threat from a foreign power that I think could be seen as capitulating to tactics that just it set a bad precedent because you don't want to set a standard where a foreign entity
Right.
can come in and do some stuff and then essentially blackmail a studio into doing something.
That would suck if that happened on a large level here.
Yeah, that would not be fun.
Well, that'd be
this I think is
weird.
more of a case of being domestically sensitive to an ongoing topic and not allowing it to become a distraction and also not allowing it to honestly come out in an environment where I just don't know if people are ready for this.
Yeah.
I understand some people are, but I think a lot of people also might not be. And but I'm sensitive to your argument, Ed, about when is the right time. I don't know.
Yeah.
The right time hopefully would be when this stops happening.
Yeah.
But we keep waiting for that too.
Right. Because I think
Yeah.
the shame of it is sort of like you said, where we have to go to Auto Tribe and just yell about stuff like this. I think there's a lot of folks in the middle of it. I get nervous. I get uncomfortable about the idea of a Joker movie. I get real bad movie theater vibes anytime I see something that's like he's playing by his own rule. Like whatever. He's an agent of chaos playing by his own rule. Like, am I gonna go like publicly rail against the release of a Joker movie, or say that it shouldn't exist, or that people shouldn't like enjoy Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker, or watch this next one, or what? No, but for me, I know that like I have a little bit of pause sometimes where I'm like, yes, all art should exist. Is that art necessarily for me? Am I worried about how people will take it? Sure, maybe,
Right.
but those are conversations that can exist without just like screaming at each other from like polar ends.
Yeah. Well, and this idea of
Now
just
scream at
like of movies or video games or whatever influencing somebody, a mentally well person does not do these kinds of horrific things. So this idea of just like, it's inspiring a lunatic. Like, my guess is that lunatic probably would have been inspired by something. Not to say that you can't be sensitive to that kind of thing, but this idea of like, well, it's because of the art. Like, if he hadn't seen The Hunt, or if he hadn't played Call of Duty, then this kid never would have done this.
No.
Or this, I disagree with that. I agree that you should be sensitive to not desensitizing people.
Right,
like
but I
that.
also think they're talking about though the monomyth that this country is basically founded on, and I'm not gonna go into it. That's save your hate clicks, but I'm just saying the monomyth of
The title of this video is, do you want to hate Ed?
it seems like we live in a country inspired by a monomyth of iconoclastic man We know what kind of man. Man decide to do this thing. They all wanted to stop me. I shot enough of them for I could do what I want. That's our monomyth. We worship at that altar all the time. And now it's 2019 and we pretend like it's a new idea. Falling down has existed forever. Neo walking into a room and just deciding to have a bunch of guns come from nowhere, from outer space, into his hands, and then he goes into a bank and shoots up a bunch of officers of the law because, they didn't take the pill, so they're in the machine, so they're not real. Dude, there's a lot of things all littered throughout. Go back to Laurel and Hardy.
And that's not even political. That's not even political spectrum stuff, because I wouldn't call the Wachowskis like card-carrying NRA Tea Party members.
But see, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Our most liberal filmmakers have bought into our Central American monomyth of guns versus inferior people win. You know what I mean? We've bought that forever. Dirty Harry's got a big giant gun. You ever seen somebody in the Dirty Harry movie with a bigger gun than Dirty Harry? No, you ain't. And it's an integral part of the myth, isn't it? You know what I mean? So it's like, dude, don't at me about this. Oh, it's new stuff influencing people. Nothing that's older than parchment paper. I mean, nothing, you know what I mean? Nothing that's younger than parchment paper has influenced this thing.
And our international viewers will probably chime in and be like, I watched those movies as well.
Yeah.
We don't seem to have a problem.
Yeah, because it's not the movies. Everywhere has Mortal Kombat, almost. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they didn't
Minimal
make
spine
these
ripping.
things.
My childhood home did not. Because it's too violent.
You know, from everything
And
that
this
you've
man
told
has
me
not ripped a single spine.
And I think that's okay. If a parent wants to let their kid not play Mortal Kombat because they think
Right.
it's too violent, that's fine.
That's your call.
That's your call as a parent. If you want to say that your kid can't watch The Matrix because you think it's too violent, that's fine. That's kind of what parents are there for.
Literally, your only job
is to sort of like, you know,
those calls.
look at your child and judge for your kids what they think they can handle and what they think that they can't handle. I love RoboCop. My mom didn't think I could handle RoboCop when I was little. I watched it when I grew up. I love it. It's a perfect movie. But that doesn't mean I should have seen it when I was 13. There's also just this idea of it's the art's responsibility to be acceptable to everyone who sees it, and it's like, no, there's a certain amount of personal responsibility you have to take if you're a parent for your kids, and you know, and then once someone is an adult, you know, the people are their own people to an extent, to every extent as well. So it's like, I just hate this idea of we've got to pin it on this.
And art by community is not, you know, you miss something when it becomes, when we lose the ability for a singular artist to be able to make their movies or their films or their video games however they want. And that is something that gets missed when it becomes like, well, I've got to make sure that I'm not, you know, I got to make sure that I'm ticking all of these boxes and so that's where, I mean, this isn't a simple discussion, and there's also obviously a lot of different factors that go into things, you know, radicalization of people online, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, we solved it, I feel.
We fixed it.
Oh, we did it. We did it. There's about a speechifying that just knocked the bullets right out the air.
Good job, team.
Thank you for watching SJU on Fandom Entertainment. Make sure to like and subscribe. Does anyone want to? Yeah, there we go.
Good one.
We have got some great stuff on fandom.com. We've got Fandom Uncovered. Dungeons and Dragons is out. It is really, really good. And thank you all so much for watching, supporting, sharing it with your friends, sharing your stories about how role-playing and tabletop RPGs and Dungeons and Dragons have had a great influence in your life. So I've been watching a lot, reading a lot of the comments, and just like getting all teary.
Yeah.
That was an art thing. We get into it in the documentary, but that was another art thing.
Satanic Panic.
People, people were like, "Oh, it's evil. It's gonna make kids. It's gonna turn kids bad."
Yeah, kids like Joe Manganiello, who turned out just fine. And we've got him in there. We've got Critical Role, among others, and a lot of amazing D&D fans. So make sure to watch and share. Next, we're going to Game of Thrones. Sven Martin recently stopped by to speak with Spencer about his work on the recently completed series. Sven and his colleagues at Pixamondo worked on seasons 2 through 8 of Game of Thrones and were the ones tasked with bringing the dragons to life, among many other notable VFX shots. They've won 3 Emmys for their work on Game of Thrones. So we're going to check out Spencer's chat with Sven, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some of the greatest effects that we liked. Be right back. Don't go nowhere.
Hey Hey, you guys. I am here with the visual effects supervisor of Pixomondo, who has been doing Game of Thrones since season 2. This man right here is the father of dragons. Sven Martin, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Yeah, someone called me like that. So, but I take that title. It's kind of quite nice. So
I hope you take it as a compliment. I hope you don't become a genocidal maniac like the mother of dragons.
I hope so too.
So how much of this are you making up? Are you consulting like zoologists? Like who knows what a dragon skeleton looks like?
You can find animals which are close.
Yeah.
So what we knew starting on season 2 was that they are only walking on the hind legs, very much like a bird. The anatomy itself was more bird-like, and of course we knew that in the later seasons they might be able to fly.
Yeah.
So we looked at birds and bats a lot, and actually changed the structure and the anatomy towards real birds, because when you look at the bird skeleton, kind of they have quite a large breastbone, because there needs to be room for the muscles driving the wings. So all these kind of real references did influence the design over the years, slightly more and more towards kind of that it's always a plausible animal. We never wanted to make a design just to look cool, because you can spot that right away. So it would never feel real if the dragons would be over-designed.
Yeah. So I want to get back to technical stuff, but nerd debate that we had in the office that this is reminding me of. Why is the fire blue? Is it really hot fire or is it magic?
No, it's not about kind of heat. So
Okay. It's magic. Okay.
It's magic. And actually there's a fun story kind of on season 2. There was also kind of the idea at the very beginning if the 3 dragons should have different colored fire. So I have seen green fire. Of course, you can color fire when you have your kind of fireworks. You can bring colors in. That kind of reddish yellow fire would also be no problem, but kind of Drogon having black fire would have been a hard tough to really sell to the audience. Actually, personally, I'm happy that they dropped that.
It looks like he's throwing up.
Possibly kind of black goo throwing up, yeah, for sure.
And now, so obviously the technology is changing throughout these years, obviously, and the show is becoming the biggest thing in television over the years. Is that in the back of your head as the show is growing? Like, did that change your approach? Like, oh, I've got millions and millions and millions of people watching now. I can't just, I have to really impress them now.
No, actually, we kind of the highest pressure is normally coming kind of from ourselves. So, of course, you always want to do the best job possible. It was after season 2 and kind of seeing that, especially the dragons became such fan favorites, kind of, and seeing kind of that the advertisement campaign of season 3 was mainly based on the dragons with kind of shadows, actually makes you very proud overall. So that kind of people really kind of like what you're doing, because normally we're working behind the curtain, of course. So it's kind of seeing people loving your work is kind of the best thing. And of course, this is what you want to keep kind of also for the next years.
Yeah.
But kind of knowing that that there are millions of people kind of watching that shot is nothing you have in your mind while you're working on it.
Okay, good. That's awesome. I want to talk about human beings for a moment. Okay. At the end of the day, you know, a lot of these shots, there is another actor in it, and I imagine that's an extreme challenge for them to interact with what is it, just like a green laser that you're shining to be like, look here, there's the dragon.
It is, for sure. No, actually on season 2, actually the big opening is Dany kind of walking through the desert, having this little dragon on her shoulder. What they did, they had this little puppet built she was carrying on her shoulder on the rehearsal. So she had something to act with.
Yeah.
And could rehearse it. But on the kind of the actual take, they took it out. So she had to pretend there's something. And even in this case, it was very hard for her to keep the eye line because there was nothing.
Yeah.
And she did an amazing job on that. So you really have to have good actors to make you believe there's something which isn't there, and especially when you have to then pick it up from your shoulders and put it in the case.
Yeah, I imagine it's an acting skill that's going to get more and more relevant as time goes on, is to stay consistent.
And of course, we try to give them as much as possible to play with.
Yeah.
So you very often have this tennis ball on a stick, someone is holding into the frame,
Right.
so that at least kind of the eye line is correct. And when you have shots like, there's this shot in season 4 when she's sitting on a stone and the dragon's head kind of resting on her lap, we had kind of a green dummy piece she could put her hand on, because if you pretend to kind of just in the air, it won't really work.
Right.
It would always be different heights. So
Yeah, you need a synergy. You need to work together with the effects and the actor. And for shots where the dragon has to show emotion, I'm curious what maybe the discussion was like for something like when Drogon melts the Iron Throne at the end. He sees Dany has died. There were emotions that go across his face in that moment.
that was the idea.
Yeah, how do you do that?
It did work out.
How do you balance that, though? Because it could look like a cartoon. It could look like, How to Train Your Dragon.
No, actually, that kind of is the trickiest thing in animation, is kind of to finding that right tone and balance. That sequence was a very special sequence for us, because it's the end of Dany's journey of her arc, and she is dying, and this specific episode was also directed by Dan and David, the showrunners. So Joe wanted to give them as much as possible up front before they're actually going on set. So we did animate the dragon up front. So we had a 2-minute long animation, which we could bring into the camera view on set. So the DP could really frame kind of based on the real dragon size in the set, and also the directors could see what the dragon is doing and could give kind of advices to kind of the actors, and not look right, or kind of just be more scared, and that was very helpful. But making it right and just hitting the right tone, we did work on it kind of until the last moment, because then David did shift it slightly more into this shot. When is the moment Drogon should realize what has happened? When is he kind of getting angry at Jon, when he's making his decision, melting the throne? And overall, kind of to not make it cartoony, that was very kind of a main thing for Joe also, that we do not humanize the dragon too much. So actually what we did, we thought about kind of pets. So when you have your dog, kind of, you can read emotions. They even they cannot speak and kind of can't really smile or whatever. They can give you an idea of what they might think. Of course, a lot of this is also projecting your thoughts back onto the animal.
Of course.
But this is kind of what was our main reference.
That's amazing. Was that your favorite shot that you worked on across all of Game of Thrones?
It was definitely kind of because of the specialty of that sequence and being involved from the very, very early stage. We actually started to work on that sequence 2 years before we finished kind of the sequence. So doing kind of first previs based on storyboards. So our involvement was very early on. So that makes it very special.
Wow,
also.
you knew 2 years before, and you had to keep the ending of Game of Thrones to yourself for 2 years.
Think of that.
Woof.
2 years
is
of
tough.
not kind of letting out that Danny's going to die.
I have to ask, Game of Thrones isn't the only thing you've worked on. I saw you worked on Justice League.
Yes.
Did you work on some stuff that we maybe didn't get to see in the final cut of that film?
What do you mean?
Are there certain other cuts that might be floating out there with some cool visual
No,
effects?
actually the work was in, but it was only minor work. So we did the Wayne plane, a jet, and some shots around this airport.
Awesome.
And they all kind of stayed in
Okay,
the
well,
final
so
shot.
is the Snyder Cut out there? Who knows? You be
Who
the
knows?
judge.
I heard
Who's
these
to
rumors,
say?
kind of. It's a constant topic, right?
Yeah, everyone, inquiring minds want to know. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope we see your work after Game of Thrones on every Game of Thrones spinoff and anything with a dragon. Call your boy, Sven Martin.
Perfect.
Thanks
you.
so much for.
Whoa.
Hello, I know, we
was
teleported in.
Bam!
That's scary. All right, so we're going to use this opportunity to talk about some of the greatest effects in modern movies and TV shows. Ed, what's one that you really like?
Well, I liked obviously Mad Max Fury Road, and I like things like even like Fight Club and some of David Fincher's things, where I feel like all three of those things I just said go into the category of you don't see them special effects, you know, because that's real as fire. These are real cars, but when the dudes start doing that boing, there's a little safety rope that they just got to erase a little bit. You know what I mean? Little stuff like that where it's like the stunt person is still in quite a lot of danger. There's a lot of dust and particles. There's all these real things, but it's just a little bit of aid to keep the actor safe while we do this incredibly visually arresting thing.
CG in support of practical.
That's vastly to me that's vastly superior to me to like actual little CGI guys doing stuff, because our eye knows. We still know.
Oh yeah, especially after, because I love Two Towers with Gollum and Smeagol, and I loved obviously like all of the big fights where they were able to suddenly make all of these faceless hordes. But that's where we started getting all of the faceless hordes, and you could see it happen almost immediately, because for the ending of Buffy season 7 or whatever, like the last episode, she gets a bunch of faceless hordes, and as soon as that started, I was like, oh no, I don't know, I don't like it was cool then, but I don't know how much I like it now. But it was huge at the time.
Yeah. Well,
you
you
know?
see that prologue in Fellowship of the Ring, and you're like, wow, the last lines of elves and men. That sure is a lot of elves and men. And then,
That
by the end
scale
of
was something that was rare, and now it's because Weta did such great work and really democratized in this movie sense that technology. Now it's easier for, like, if you're making a terrible King Arthur movie to give it the same kind of scale that Lord of the Rings had, because now everybody can use it.
Yeah. Oh,
And
bummer.
stop to think they should.
I have some nice things to say about two Nolan films. I think both of us were going to hit the Nolan love fest a little bit. Inception, the hallway fight is phenomenal. I just love the way that guy moves around a camera to just explore different angles and visuals, and they're not basic. What he's doing is very, very difficult, but they're still just really great, simple tricks,
Right.
and not these fully CG realized things. The Bane escape in Dark Knight Rises. I don't like Dark Knight Rises like at all, but the Bane escape in the plane is awesome. Like, that is such a cool sequence, and they did it practically for the most part. It's just fantastic.
That's pretty cool. Weirdly, just a weird aside, I used to work at a law office in Seattle, and we had a bridge that would like go up, and we were right next to it. So every time we would have people in the office, they looked like they were doing Inception, just like watching, because it's like a street. It's like a street that opens up that lets aquatic transport go by during rush hour, which shouldn't be allowed. But yeah, so it would always freak out all of our clients.
I'm impressed by. I mean, I agree with Ed, and it still looks cool. But the things like Iron Man and Hulk and all that, like the superhero stuff, it looks cool. But it's also, you're very conscious of the fact that it's a visual effect. That doesn't mean I don't like it or respect the artistry.
Right.
I do 100%.
Yeah,
but the stuff that like really makes my jaw drop is the stuff that that is either so ordinary that I didn't notice. John Adams did one of the best VFX reels. I think you can find it on YouTube, where they just showed the VFX in the movie, and you realize that everything that you took as real because it's set in a certain time was all digital, but because it was in the background, you didn't notice it. It's like that really impressed me. But then it's stuff like the other Nolan movie I was going to bring up was Interstellar, where it's stuff that doesn't exist. You can't shoot it practically because it's not real. But in the context of watching the movie, I never sat and said to myself, I'm watching a visual effect. I thought, I'm looking at a black hole. I'm looking at this weird visualization of a tesseract. I'm looking at this wave planet. I think it's a combination of storytelling, but also design and great craftsmanship that you can make impossible things, a 100-story tall wall of water, look so great that I'm not sitting there thinking in the moment how great the VFX are. I'm thinking about that after the movie. I'm thinking about how great the VFX were on the black hole after the movie. In the movie, I am 100% in the reality of that moment of that movie. I've said my piece on Interstellar many times, but there are sequences and segments of that movie that are just masterful. The docking sequence. I'm not sitting there thinking about how great the effects are in that docking sequence. I'm watching the action, and that's a combination of fantastic VFX work, direction, acting, score, you name it.
I think what you said is interesting about like storytelling and just simple, decisions by the director and the filmmakers, because the effects some of the effects in A New Hope are incredible. I really wish I'd been able to be there with my older brother and my dad when they saw it, and that the ships go over your head for the very first time. It's like I feel like that would have been like the reverse of watching the train come through the screen for the first time.
Yeah.
But then there's smaller stuff where Mos Eisley is Halloween store costumes, but I think that the artistic decision, which was then informed by a budget decision, all those things, to make Star Wars that, everyone with Star Wars always talks about lived in. It's got to feel lived in. It's got to feel lived in. Well, that artistic decision came from the fact of we have a very finite amount of money and time. But they're all in service of each other, and Mos Eisley looks good as a result. Like, they make the Halloween store costumes work because everything is supposed to look bottom of the barrel and dirty and lived
There's
in
a wolf
and
man.
crappy. Yeah, there's a wolf man.
Yeah.
But
Is
for
he the one
some,
that got painted over? The Wolfman?
yeah, Wolfman got painted over. But
Yeah.
for some reason, like
Save Wolfman.
like that combination of things, like for me at least, like makes all of that work instead of just looking like a straight to Blockbuster DVD release.
Right. Alrighty, so we have got one last story here. So Endgame writers respond to fans, and a very lovely Ryan caption. We played a game that definitely isn't a feud revolving around families in any way, shape, or form with the writers of Avengers Endgame, which is hitting Blu-ray this week following its recent digital release. So
They're good sports about this. Marcus McFeely were good sports about this.
That's pretty great. And so thank you all so much for joining us. Stick around and watch the rest of that. Please share Fandom Uncovered D&D with your friends, and we will see you all tomorrow. Bye.
We've been out on the street today at Comic-Con asking fans some questions about Avengers Endgame. And what I'm going to ask you to do is guess the most popular answer.
Okay.
Who was the standout character in Avengers Endgame?
Captain America. Steve Rogers.
For me, it's a tie between Spider-Man and also Captain Marvel.
Tony Stark.
That was the most popular answer, but it tied with
Thor.
correct.
Fat Thor.
I thought Thor, the way they changed him up to make his body look like the dude from The Big Lebowski, I thought he was awesome.
I thought it was really well spaced and really well balanced, especially because they had to kill off characters, and so they balanced it really, really well.
Aw, it's very complimentary from
That's extremely nice to hear.
We asked people what they thought the most badass moment was.
Is when everybody came through Doctor Strange's portals. I would say the portal moment, a real close second, would be when Captain America gets Mjolnir.
Both Asgardian weapons being used in tandem.
When Captain America had Thor's hammer.
I'm gonna go with Steve picking up the hammer.
Yeah, it's Steve and the Hammer.
Wasn't.
Oh.
What is it?
It was the A-Force Assemble.
When all the female characters got together at the end, virtually all of the women protecting Petey from the incoming armies.
Oh, that would be when all the girls got together.
Cool.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Next one is the moment that made them cry.
For me, the moment where it seemed like all hope was lost, and then all of a sudden you hear like Sam Wilson say,
On your left.
I couldn't help it, I started crying.
The snap, the I am Iron Man.
Okay, so the cryest moment is probably Tony's death. Natasha's death.
Natasha's death. Steve dancing with Peggy, I think, is
Pretty
a nice
good.
cry.
I think Steve looking at Peggy through the window gets a little dusty in there. Scott Lang seeing his daughter gets me a little frickling.
And maybe Tony and his dad.
You've mentioned a lot that aren't even on here.
Okay, well,
Are there ones that we haven't mentioned that are on there?
Yeah, A-Force.
Makes people cry?
Yeah, Fat Thor made people cry, yeah. Well, he was sad, wasn't he? The overriding answer was Tony's death.
yes.
When Iron Man died and he was like, I love you 3000. I love you 3000. When he dies and Peter's holding him and then Pepper puts him down and says,
You can rest now.
that was only one of like the 5 times I cried.
It's probably the cheeseburgers.
I'm gonna get you all the cheeseburgers you want.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
With Tony Stark's daughter.
What a treat this is.
It's delightful. That is
Because
delightful.
I can't walk around Comic-Con and say, hey, when did I make you cry?
Next one was, their funniest moment was.
I'm gonna go with when they come to Thor's house and he greets them shirtless.
Hail Hydra's funny, but surprising. America's Ass, probably up there.
It was the taco scene. with
It's number one?
15%. Yeah.
Really?
God.
Why are you surprised?
It's sort of a throwaway.
Rudd is a master.
Oh, God.
Sometimes some of the funniest things are come up with on the day or an ad lib by somebody.
Or a reaction shot.
Or a reaction shot,
You know,
right.
where you
That's
can't
like-
write a reaction.
But we scripted tacos fly
Yeah.
out of his hand. Like, that's just dead on the page.
And I still remember sitting there, millions of dollars of camera equipment. We were on location. You know, God knows, it was like mounting an army, and it was a close-on shot of Paul Rudd holding a taco.
What was their pee break moment?
I'm insulted if anyone answers this.
It was somewhere after Natasha's death, but before Thanos comes back.
You could probably do it during the Scott Lang time travel test because it doesn't act like if you missed it, you're not going to miss any of the movie. The scene after that, Tony and Steve get back together. You want to miss that? The scene before that, the Hulk's eating pancakes. You want to miss that?
Nobody could name a pee break moment.
Good.
And here's what they said.
Good.
You don't pee. You just hold it.
No, I peed in my pants.
I know people who did diapers.
I just say just bring like a 2-liter water bottle with you, man. If you gotta go, just take it in there.
No. That is the ideal pee break.
No,
we
absolutely
didn't.
not.
No, you gotta just power through.
Excellent.
Damn right.
My faith is restored.
Let's hear it for America's strong bladder.
And on that note, thank you very much, Christopher. Thank you,
you.
Stephen.